The term bridegroom of blood, katan damim in Hebrew, is an expression of relief from Zipporah and gratitude because the threat to her marriage to Moses has ended with Moses' death.
And it came to pass by the way in the inn that the Lord met him, and sought to kill him. Exodus 4:24.
In Exodus 4:24, there is no mention of Moses in the original text in that verse, leading to two interpretations that either Moses or his son would be killed. There are two opinions on who the Lord sought to kill, indicated by the pronoun him in the phrase sought to kill him. The first opinion suggests that the Lord sought to kill Moses, while the second opinion suggests that the Lord sought to kill his son named Gershom. This opinion is based on Genesis 17-14, which states that the uncircumcised shall be cut off,
and an uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. Genesis 17:14.
The second opinion states that Moses forgot the fundamental covenant between the Lord and Israel, which is circumcision, compared to Joshua 5:3-9. Thus, the one to be killed would be Moses himself. I agree with this opinion. If the Lord sought to kill Moses' son, perhaps the verse would have mentioned sought to kill his son. I see the understanding of male in that verse as more directed towards those responsible for circumcision. According to Jewish tradition, those responsible for circumcision are oneself for adults, parents for children, and masters for servants or slaves. At that time, Moses' son was still under the responsibility of Moses and Zipporah, especially Moses. However, it is also possible that the punishment for a parent's mistake is imposed on the child, as in the incident of the killing of the firstborn in Egypt. Why did God want to kill Moses? Because Moses neglected to perform the sign of the covenant, namely circumcision on his own son. This was seen as blatant disobedience on the part of Moses and his wife. Apparently, God caused Moses to suffer from an illness that could endanger him until he circumcised his son. This incident shows that God's selection of someone only applies as long as that person is obedient. However, regardless of who was to be killed, God shows no partiality, and his special servants must be obedient and also fulfill their special duties. Moses neglected to circumcise his son, and God arose to enforce the requirements of his demands. Circumcision is not just an ordinary event. It is, above all, a covenant, berit, between God and humans. Therefore, this ritual is called the covenant of circumcision, Hebrew, Brit Milah, or Berit Hamilah, literally, covenant of circumcision. Was Moses circumcised? About Zipporah, although not from the Israelite nation, but from the Midianite people, she still had a connection with the God of Abraham because Midian was descended from Abraham through his wife named Keturah. So, both were descendants of Abraham. Who knew the terms of the covenant of circumcision? Zipporah was the daughter of Jethro, a Midianite priest who inherited the covenant of circumcision from Abraham. It can be assumed that when Moses was a baby, he was not circumcised to conceal his Hebrew identity. However, when Moses married Zipporah, the daughter of the Midianite priest Jethro, at that time Moses was circumcised.
Then Zipporah took a sharp stone, and cut off the foreskin of her son, and cast it at his feet, and said, Surely a bloody husband art thou to me. Exodus 4:25.
The term bridegroom of blood, katan damim in Hebrew, is an expression of relief from Zipporah and gratitude because the threat to her marriage to Moses has ended with Moses' death. Circumcision is not only a sign for a male descendant of Abraham to enter into the covenant of Abraham, it is also a sign for a bride that the man she is marrying is indeed a worshiper of the Most High God. A properly circumcised man is a bridegroom of blood, katan damim to her. But why did Zipporah touch Gershom's foreskin to Moses' feet? The most likely scenario is that feet of Moses refers to his reproductive organ, a common euphemistic expression in the Hebrew Bible. Moses, thus, became renewed. Moses had become her bridegroom, katan, once again, thanks to the blood, damim, of circumcision. In other words, Moses became a bridegroom again because of that circumcision blood. Is circumcision required for Christian believers? Indeed, circumcision is obligatory for the people of Israel. Jesus himself was circumcised because he was a Jewish descendant by flesh. However, Acts 15:1-2 was not the teaching of the apostles, but rather the instigation of some Jewish circles for non-Jewish Christians to also be circumcised. Please read Acts 15:1-29 for more details. The practice of circumcision, which had existed among other nations, was used to signify that a person was brought into the covenant of Abraham. However, anthropologists do not agree on the exact origin of circumcision. The earliest hard evidence comes from ancient Egyptian mummies dating back to around 2300 BC. Claims date circumcision in Egypt to earlier centuries, depicting the circumcision ritual as a prerequisite for priesthood. There is still debate whether circumcision was a mark of pride rather than prejudice in the ancient Egyptian world. While popular among the elite, forced circumcision was imposed on Phoenician and Jewish slaves as a badge of humiliation. More practical, or rather, less lethal than castration. Whatever its origin, by 1800 BC, Jews were circumcising for worship reasons, to honor God's command to Abraham as recorded in the Torah, as a sign of Orthodox Judaism. Circumcision is viewed as inherently essential for adherence to the Torah law and salvation. However, circumcision is a human act for righteousness. Therefore, who Christ is and what he did means little to those who are solely concerned with fulfilling the requirements of the Torah law. Salvation does not come through Christ plus the Torah law, but through Christ alone. No one can perfectly fulfill the Torah law, because the Torah law demands perfect obedience, which is impossible by such surrender and the desire to be justified by such acts. One essentially and in fact separates oneself from the environment of grace and from the faithfulness in Jesus Christ. Thus, one makes that grace ineffective.
You have been severed from Christ. You who are seeking to be justified by law, you have fallen from grace. Galatians 5-4.
Fallen from grace, tes kritos exepisate, literally fallen. Lost, shipwrecked from grace, does not mean falling out of salvation, but rather falling away from a life connected with grace into a life entangled in legalism. These two paths are opposite. To embrace legalism is to reject Christ. One cannot try to save oneself while at the same time placing full trust in Christ for salvation.